The Amazon rainforest, a breathtaking natural wonder. It has always been seen as a pristine wilderness, home to no more than a scattering of small tribes. But today, the Amazon is at the center of a monumental mystery. According to one centuries-old account, giant cities once thrived in the jungle, and now astonishing discoveries
This is incredible. There's so much here.
are raising the question, could that be true?
There were many people living in the Amazon.
With new technology, scientists are searching for clues to solve the mystery. 10 million people. So where have they all gone?
The regional population was reduced to about 1% of the indigenous population of 500 years ago.
Today, scientists want to solve the puzzling mystery of what could destroy an entire civilization, and whether their last descendants are doomed to suffer the same fate today.
Is there any lesson that we can learn from archaeology?
Deep in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon, near the large riverside town of Tefe, scientists are exploring a jungle region called Ponta da Castanha. Here, the arrival of electricity to remote villages is revealing unexpected clues to local archaeologists. Post holes, dug to carry cables across the jungle, are exposing a disturbing chapter in its history.
I was looking around the earth that they took up, and what we were finding is this.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, you can see the red painting, the white paint.
Yeah.
Looks like we have polychrome, traditional ceramics.
The tradition of polychrome pottery stretches back hundreds of years here. It's characterized by fine ceramic urns, painted in red, white, and black. It's found all over the central and western Amazon. But here, it's a real hotspot.
Yeah, you can dig around in any place around here and probably gonna find pottery.
In the right condition, pottery can give precious clues to archaeologists like Eduardo Neves.
They last for a long time. So for us archaeologists, ceramics, they're very good portrayers or conveyors of cultural information. We can trace cultural identity, belief systems by looking at the iconography or the technology of ceramic vessels.
The pottery here is telling them something deeply unsettling. These fine vessels once contained human bones. They are ritual burial urns. But puzzlingly, there are two very different styles.
Wow, check this baby.
All the older urns are very elaborate, but the newer ones are much plainer.
This kind of tradition, very complex burial urns, is something that was lost.
To archaeologist Rafael Lopez, this sudden change in burial tradition reveals a seismic shift in fortune. Something catastrophic happened to these people that put an end to the luxurious burials and traditional pottery skills. And Rafael can pinpoint exactly when that happened.
These ones are dated from around 1550, which is the same date that marks the arrival of the Europeans in the Amazon.
This revelation sheds crucial light on the catastrophic events of the past.
If you look at the early colonial history of South America, so what did the Portuguese do? They started like planting sugarcane. These plantations, they needed slavery, like slave labor. So a lot of the most important economic activity here in the Amazon, up to the mid-18th century, was slave raiding.
Suddenly, indigenous people faced a terrible new enemy.
They started to go further away from the large river margins because that was the place where slave raids were being made and where these people were being captured. And those people are seen as isolated, but they're actually running away.
archaeology is revealing a completely new history of the Amazon. Remote groups that we once believed had never made contact with the outside world, we now know fled from slavery to the safety of the jungle 500 years ago. It seems the arrival of European slave traders had a huge impact on the indigenous civilizations of the Amazon. But they didn't wipe out the population entirely. But new evidence suggests another silent killer played an even bigger role in the fall of Amazon civilizations. It's the latest in a series of discoveries, revealing a trail of destruction left by European settlers in the 1500s.
The arrival of the Europeans had catastrophic consequences for indigenous populations in terms of warfare, annihilation and killing of people, slaving of them.
But new evidence reveals those first Europeans triggered an even more sinister wave of destruction. In central Brazil, on a tributary of the Amazon River, the Xingu Indigenous Park in Brazil is home to the Kwikuru people. Archaeologist Michael Heckenberger has spent over 20 years grappling with the mystery of what happened to Amazon civilizations deep in the forest, beyond the reach of those first settlers.
The work here in the Xingu has been very important in understanding these indigenous populations. And the way that we can understand that primarily is the changes in the settlements themselves.
What Michael's revealed is a game changer in Amazon history. The ruins of a vast network of giant villages.
They go from very, very large in many in one area to single villages that are 10 times smaller.
At some time, this region suffered a massive population crash.
So we've estimated that the regional population in 1500 was about 50,000 people. In 1950, the regional population was reduced to 9 villages and about 500 people. So that's about 1% of the indigenous population of 500 years ago.
This dramatic crash affected other Amazon communities too. For some tribes, it was final. But there's a mystery. The first Europeans only reached some parts of the Amazon, yet populations crashed everywhere. What was going on? Records from other parts of the Americas reveal that when Europeans arrived there, they brought diseases, which indigenous people had no immunity against. But many people assumed remote Amazon communities were safe.
There was a thought that somehow the Amazon forest insulated those populations. And it certainly insulated them from direct contact with colonial groups or explorers.
But new evidence is turning that thought on its head, revealing those remote jungle societies were far from isolated.
We know that there was trade networks, but there also was very clear indication that people were interacting. They had social engagements and participated in activities with one another from one village to another. And so very clearly, people were moving around enough that they could spread the disease.
Michael believes this would be enough to decimate populations with no immunity. And now, new evidence is backing up the theory. Local nurse Laura Castro has studied the results of a vaccination program launched in the dwindling Kwikuru community.
Mas assim, os relatos que eu sei que antigamente, né, teve muita tuberculose, né, teve meningite, mas principalmente a tuberculose. Né, antigamente, que aí agora já deu uma controlada nessa questão da tuberculose, né?
For the first time in 500 years, the population is growing.
Assim, todo ano tem um monte de mulheres gestantes. Então, assim, ela aumenta, porque não é só nossa região, né? Tem as outras regiões, mas todo ano aumenta.
Modern anthropology is providing evidence to help archaeologists solve an ancient mystery.
One of the remarkable discoveries of recent archaeology is the fact that the people who lived in the Amazon had undergone the very same type of catastrophic depopulation from epidemic diseases that happened in other places in the Americas.
But our picture of the fall of Amazon civilizations is still not complete. Now scientists are revealing that in some places it may have already begun before Europeans arrived.
That moment for the people living here was a catastrophic event.
In the mission to discover what destroyed a once great civilization in the rainforest, investigations are reaching the furthest corners of the Amazon basin and probing deep under the ground. In Bolivia, the Llanos de Mojos floodplains are barely populated today, but Amazonian societies once thrived here.
Let's have a look.
Earth scientist Umberto Lombardo is trying to find out when they were here.
Now is the nicest part, is when we clean it and we see if something is there, something interesting.
Soil cores can contain traces of charcoal, seeds and pollen, clues that reveal when people were living here. And mysteriously, there is no trace of human activity here for the last 600 years.
The latest archaeological evidence we have is 100 years before the arrival of Columbus.
Unless heavy rains have washed away the evidence of a whole century of pre-Columbian life here, the population must have been wiped out by something else, long before European settlers could reach them. And Umberto believes his soil cores reveal the true catastrophic story of this Amazon population.
When we look at the paleontological record together with the archaeological one, we see that there is a dry period in between 1200 1300 AD.
A century of extreme drought plagued this region 700 years ago. And that wasn't the first time. Umberto has discovered evidence of repeated environmental catastrophes stretching over millennia.
We are talking about 80,000 square kilometers of this area get flooded, and the floods can last 2, 3, 4 months, depending on the year, depending on the Niño La Niña cycle, but it gets flooded for many months. Then, when the dry season comes, and the water has already drained, then we have several months of very, very little rain. So everything becomes so dry that finding water becomes a problem.
People living here have consistently struggled with the environment. And the soil cores also tell us it was the environment that eventually pushed them out.
So the sites we have excavated up to now are located here in the central southern part of the Llano de Mojos. And from those sites, we know that people left, they abandoned the area around 4,000 years before present, which coincides with the moment in which we know that the climate become wetter. And this change in climate induced a change in the behavior of the rivers.
4,000 years ago, he believes a river changed course, flooding this entire area and burying it under 5 feet of mud.
So we think that this catastrophic event pushed people out of this area. I think climate is the main culprit of the disappearing of these societies.
Ironically, what was catastrophic for one civilization effectively laid the foundations for a subsequent one.
The same rivers that pushed people away 4,000 years ago, those rivers create the condition for a rich society to settle here, because the old soils, which are with little nutrients, they were covered with fresh alluvium, with sediment just eroded from the Andes. So the land became far more fertile than it was before. These rivers create a sedimentary lobe. So locally, they create a topography, which improved the drainage. So we had these new conditions in this area. We had like a better drainage than in the rest of the Mojos, and we also have good soil. So when people settled here, they were able to farm maize. And we know that they produce a lot of maize in this area.
These farmers who arrived 2,000 years ago were the ones that were probably also wiped out by climate changes just before Columbus arrived. Umberto's discoveries reveal that the collapse of Amazonian society was not a one-off event. It was driven by a succession of catastrophes, climatic and human. And the threat remains to this day, as the last survivors of that civilization battle to save their culture and their sacred lands from destruction.
To destroy sacred sites, this is the equivalent of bombing Mecca, Jerusalem, the Vatican.
But now, could archaeology be the key to saving ancient indigenous homes? Archaeologists across the Amazon are beginning to solve the mystery of an ancient jungle civilization and its collapse. But their greatest source of clues is under threat, as the living descendants of that civilization face a whole new wave of struggles. Now, one community is teaming up with archaeologists to protect themselves and their sacred lands from devastation by a massive hydroelectric dam. 150 miles south of the Amazon River, beyond the city of Itaituba, over 100 scattered villages mark the ancient territory of the Munduruku people.
Bom, a gente é guerreiro, já foi guerreiro, os Munduruku.
The Munduruku live along the sprawling Tapajós River. They've welcomed archaeologist Bruna Rocha and her family into their villages to help with their battle for survival.
The Munduruku currently face a number of threats, very serious threats.
The worst is a government scheme to dam the Tapajós River for hydroelectricity. It threatens to flood their homes, their history, and their sacred land.
One of the main tributaries of the Tapajós has already been dammed, and important sacred sites for the Munduruku have been destroyed.
Chief Juarez Munduruku hopes that Bruna's expertise will help them to save their most sacred sites from flooding.
Se fosse construído, ela traz uma série de problemas para o povo Munduruku. A gente corre o risco de perder a cultura. Como era que ia ficar? A gente ia perder muita coisa, né? Não é só a gente, tantos animais, tantos peixes que vivem dentro d'água, aonde a gente tira a nossa alimentação.
The government only recognizes a fraction of the Munduruku territory, so they have decided to take direct action, and archaeology is their secret weapon. Usually it decodes the past, but tribal leader Alessandra Munduruku hopes archaeology can protect her tribe's future.
O povos indígenas tem que buscar alguém que ajuda, né? Que para provar para o mundo, provar para o governo que o território é seu. Então, é a importância do arqueólogo, a importância do antropólogo trazer essas informações, fazer pesquisa dentro do território e dizer, realmente existiu os indígenas aqui.
Bruna has made crucial discoveries, evidence that backs up Munduruku oral history and proves they've lived here for centuries.
We find elements in the archaeology that seem to relate to the Munduruku people. When the Munduruku are going to go into battle, part of their preparation is to paint themselves because this gives them strength.
The patterns in this war paint are a crucial clue because Bruna has discovered ancient pottery on the Munduruku territory decorated with almost identical patterns.
This pottery dates to between the 7th and the 9th century AD. So if we combine archaeology with the Munduruku oral traditions and their cultural geography, this region has a very rich and complex past. I think it's quite safe to say that the Munduruku language family is at least 2,000 years old.
Bruna's archaeology is helping the Munduruku to defend their territorial rights.
Somos os primeiros daqui dessa terra. Nós somos o original dessa terra.
But the battle is not yet won. The Munduruku people want their whole territory recognized to guarantee protection for their most sacred sites. But Munduruku territory is only defined by oral tradition, which makes it hard to defend. So now, backed by Bruna's archaeological evidence, Paca Alves is leading a team to create a physical boundary around all of their lands.
O que foi decidido em consenso com todas as